This summer, two classmates were just supposed to paint a school mural. But as their brushes touched the wall, something deeper began to bloom between them. Can friendship turn into something more when hearts are left on a canvas? Join us as we dive into The Summer We Painted, a heartwarming BL story full of laughter, mistakes, stolen glances, and the kind of summer love that leaves a permanent mark. Watch until the end to see how their summer unfolds, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more captivating BL stories. The summer sun hovered high above the school courtyard, casting a harsh glare on the blank wall that stretched across the north side of the campus. It was the kind of heat that made paint dry too fast, and most students had long since retreated to air-conditioned classrooms or the shady corners of the campus lawn. All except Ren, who crouched low, brush in hand, carefully applying the first strokes of a mural that was supposed to transform the otherwise dull concrete wall into something vibrant. Kai noticed him from across the courtyard. He had wandered out during a free period, notebook in hand, when the sudden explosion of color caught his eye. Ren's dark hair fell messily over his eyes, and the sunlight glinted off the strands in a way that made them almost golden at the tips. His concentration was intense, lips slightly parted, brows furrowed, as if the world beyond the mural didn't exist. Kai paused for a moment just watching. Something about the way Ren moved, deliberate, careful, as if every brushstroke carried meaning, made him curious. It wasn't like Kai had never painted before. He had, in fact, dabbled a little in art class, mostly doodling abstract shapes and splashes of color. But there was a difference between casually painting and creating something with purpose. Ren's mural seemed alive, like the wall itself was breathing beneath his fingers. "You're bleeding paint," Kai said, finally speaking, stepping a little closer. Ren froze mid-stroke. The brush trembled in his hand, smearing a streak of cerulean blue across the surface of the wall. He glanced down at his fingers, now splattered with multiple shades of paint, and then back up at Kai with wide, startled eyes. I guess I am," he said softly, voice barely above a whisper. You paint too?" Kai shrugged, leaning casually against a nearby table. "I can try," he said, a small smirk playing on his lips. "I mean, I'm not an expert, but I'm not completely hopeless either." Ren blinked, uncertain if he should trust the stranger. Kai, on the other hand, seemed utterly unconcerned about the mess of paint on his hands and clothes, a stark contrast to Ren's meticulousness. There was a boldness in Kai that Ren found strangely intriguing, even if it made him a little nervous. Okay, Ren said after a moment, lowering his brush. "If you want to try, you can." And so, awkwardly, the collaboration began. Kai picked up a brush, dipping it into a puddle of yellow paint with the exaggerated caution of someone afraid of making a mistake. Ren watched him, lips pressed together, a mixture of amusement and concern flickering across his face. "You're doing it wrong," Ren said finally, unable to stop himself. "Not badly, but you're holding the brush weird." Kai laughed, a bright, unrestrained sound that made Ren flinch slightly. "Weird how?" Ren bent closer, demonstrating the proper way to hold the brush, his fingers brushing Kai's briefly. The touch was accidental, but it sent an unexpected shiver up Kai's spine. He smiled, leaning back slightly. "You're a tough critic," he said, teasing. Ren's cheeks flushed, though he didn't look away. I just want it to look right," he admitted quietly. For the next hour they painted side by side. Kai's strokes were broad and expressive, sometimes splashing color where it wasn't intended. Ren's strokes were careful, precise, blending shades with almost obsessive attention. Despite the difference in styles, the two began to find a rhythm. Kai's energy filling in spaces Ren hadn't considered, Ren's precision correcting the chaos Kai created. At one point, Kai accidentally tripped over a paint bucket, sending a wave of orange paint splattering onto the ground. "Oh no!" he exclaimed, stepping back only to see Ren laughing softly. "It's fine," Ren said, brushing a strand of hair behind his ear. "Mistakes happen. Sometimes they add character." Kai grinned, relieved. "Add character, huh? I like that. Maybe I should spill paint more often." Ren shook his head, though the smile tugging at his lips betrayed him. "Don't push it," he said, though there was warmth in his voice, a kind of quiet camaraderie that Kai hadn't expected. As the afternoon sun climbed higher, the mural slowly began to take shape. A riot of colors began to emerge, from sweeping strokes of blues and greens to small, careful details of flowers and clouds. Students passing by paused to admire the work, whispering among themselves, but Kai and Ren were oblivious. They were in their own world, where only the wall, the paint, and the rhythm of brush against concrete existed. By the time the sun began its slow descent, casting a golden glow across the courtyard. The two stepped back to survey their progress. The mural wasn't finished, not by a long shot, but it already radiated life and movement. Kai looked at Ren, noting the way his eyes followed every stroke with intense focus, the tiny crease between his brows when he concentrated. "You know," Kai said, breaking the comfortable silence, "you're really good at this." Ren's ears reddened slightly and he looked down at his hands. "I've been painting for a while," he murmured. "It's nothing special." Kai shook his head. "No, seriously. You have a way of seeing, I don't know, things differently. Colors, shapes, it's like you can make the wall come alive." Ren didn't respond immediately. Instead, he dipped his brush into a small pool of blue and made a careful stroke across the wall. It was subtle, almost hidden, but it spoke volumes. Kai found himself watching Ren's movements, captivated by the quiet confidence behind each stroke. As the sky turned a soft shade of orange and pink, Kai realized he hadn't even noticed the hours passing. The courtyard was emptying, shadows stretching long across the ground. Yet neither of them seemed to care. For the first time in a long time, Kai felt like he belonged somewhere, not in the hallways full of chatter and noise, but here, in the quiet companionship of someone who shared the same passion, someone who made him want to try harder. Ren finally looked up, his dark eyes meeting Kai's. There was something unspoken there, a connection that neither fully understood yet. A tentative smile formed on his lips. "Same time tomorrow?" he asked quietly. Kai's grin widened. "Definitely. Can't leave the wall half-finished, can we?" Ren nodded, tucking a loose strand of hair behind his ear. "No. It deserves everything." As Kai walked home that evening, paint still smeared across his fingers, he couldn't stop thinking about Ren. The way he moved, the way he laughed, the way he made something as simple as a blank wall feel like the beginning of something extraordinary. He didn't know it yet, but the summer ahead was going to change both of their lives, one brushstroke at a time. And in that golden light of the evening, Kai realized that this mural, this project, wasn't just about painting. It was about leaving a piece of themselves behind, and maybe, just maybe, finding someone else willing to do the same. The courtyard had grown quieter in the days following their first afternoon painting together. Most students had either gone home or were lounging in the shade, scrolling through phones or chatting in small groups. But for Kai and Rin, the summer days were measured not by hours or heat, but by the rhythm of their brushes against the wall. Kai arrived first that morning, carrying a backpack filled with paint tubes, brushes, and a water bottle that was half empty from the walk in the heat. He leaned against the wall, stretching, and waited. The sun was already warm, making the cool morning shade of the trees a small comfort. Rin appeared moments later, hands tucked into the pockets of his paint-stained jeans. His dark hair was messily pushed back, exposing his high forehead and sharp brows, though a few strands still clung to his damp forehead. He gave Kai a small, almost hesitant smile, the kind that made Kai's chest tighten without warning. "Morning," Kai said brightly, offering a fist bump instead of a handshake. Ren's hand hovered for a second before he tapped it gently. "Morning," Ren replied softly, then stepped closer to the wall, assessing yesterday's work with quiet intensity. For the next hour, they worked in companionable silence. Kai's strokes were bold and messy, a dance of color across the concrete, while Ren's were precise, layered with subtle gradients and delicate textures. Occasionally their brushes collided, smudging unintended lines. Each time, Kai would look at Ren apologetically, and Ren would just shake his head, letting out a soft chuckle that sounded almost like music. "You're getting better," Ren said quietly, not looking at Kai, his focus still on blending a shade of green into a streak of orange. Kai grinned. "Yeah. I think I'm finally learning from the master." He nudged Ren's shoulder playfully with his own. Ren stiffened slightly, then smirked, a rare, fleeting expression that made Kai's stomach flutter. As the morning stretched on, they began sharing more than just the wall. Kai hummed under his breath, a strange, tuneless melody that Ren couldn't help but notice. "What are you singing?" Ren asked, tilting his head curiously. Kai shrugged, continuing his brush strokes. "Nothing. Just a summer song." Ren watched him for a long moment, his dark eyes thoughtful. "It's weird," he murmured. "But I like it." Kai laughed, a sound that bounced between the walls of the courtyard and made Ren's heart skip. "You like weird songs too, huh?" Ren looked down at his hands, now covered in layers of blue and green. "Maybe," he admitted. By noon the sun was high and the heat pressed down on them relentlessly. They took a break under the shade of a large tree nearby, sitting cross-legged on the grass. Kai pulled out a water bottle and offered it to Ren, who hesitated before taking a small sip. You always bring water? Rin asked, wiping his sweaty forehead. Kai grinned. Only on days I don't want to pass out. You should try it sometime. Rin smiled faintly, then looked away, focusing on a small butterfly flitting through the air. For Kai, these quiet moments, the small pauses between laughter and conversation, were just as important as painting. They were learning about each other, piece by piece, stroke by stroke. After a short break, they returned to the wall. There was a section in the middle that had remained blank for days, and Kai finally mustered the courage to ask, "What do you want to put here?" "It feels empty." Ren's gaze lingered on the empty space. His brush hovered over a pot of blue paint, fingers trembling slightly. Then, almost as if speaking to himself, he whispered, "Something, us." Kai froze. "Us." Ren nodded, brushing his fingers lightly over the wet wall and leaving a small, vibrant handprint. It was subtle, almost hidden against the swirling colors, but to Kai, it was like a secret confession written in paint. Without thinking, Kai pressed his own hand beside it, feeling the warmth of the wet paint and the unexpected electricity that ran between them. Their fingers brushed and both flinched slightly, though neither pulled away. For a moment, silence enveloped them, filled only by the distant chirping of birds and the occasional scrape of brush against concrete. Kai felt his heart pounding, aware of Ren's presence in a way that went beyond friendship. Ren, for his part, didn't look at Kai, but the faint blush creeping up his neck betrayed his awareness of the closeness. "Do you always do this?" Kai asked softly, nodding toward the handprints. Ren's lips pressed into a thin line. "Sometimes," he admitted. "Only with things that matter." Kai swallowed hard, unsure how to respond. Instead, he returned to painting, letting the silence stretch comfortably between them. But beneath the casual strokes, beneath the laughter over spilled paint and teasing comments, a new layer of something unspoken was forming, a fragile, delicate bond that neither fully understood yet. Over the next week, their days became a series of shared rituals. Kai would arrive first, often humming, and wait for Ren, who would appear with a quiet nod and a small smile. They worked together, debated over colors, shared snacks, and occasionally brushed hands accidentally, or not so accidentally, while reaching for the same paint tube. One afternoon, after a particularly long session, Ren leaned back against the wall, wiping sweat from his forehead. I like working with you," he said quietly, almost shyly. Kai's heart skipped. "I like working with you too," he replied, trying to sound casual, though his voice betrayed him. "More than I thought I would." Ren glanced at him, eyes dark and unreadable for a moment, then looked away, focusing on a streak of purple that Kai had added to the mural. "I think this summer might be special," he said softly. Kai smiled, feeling warmth spread through his chest. "Yeah, I think it might be." As the days passed, the mural grew in complexity and color, but more importantly, so did their connection. Every brushstroke, every shared laugh, every accidental touch left a mark, not just on the wall but on their hearts. And in the quiet, golden afternoons of summer, Kai realized that he was no longer just excited about painting. He was excited about Rin, about the shy smiles, the soft laughter, and the way Rin made even the simplest moments feel extraordinary. The wall was no longer just a blank canvas. It had become a space where something new, fragile, and beautiful was taking shape, something neither of them could yet name but both were beginning to feel. And as the sun dipped toward the horizon, casting warm amber light across the courtyard, Kai and Rin stood side by side, hands smudged with paint, hearts quietly racing, and a shared understanding that this summer was only just beginning. The morning air was thick with humidity, carrying the faint scent of freshly cut grass and paint. Kai arrived at the courtyard, humming softly under his breath, a habit Ren had come to recognize as his unofficial signature. Today, however, something felt off. Ren was already there, crouched low in front of the mural, his brush moving more slowly than usual, his usual confident strokes tinged with hesitation. Kai tilted his head, studying him. "Morning," he called, trying to sound casual. Ren looked up, eyes shadowed. "Morning," he replied, voice quieter than usual. He quickly looked back at the wall, as if focusing there could shield him from something he didn't want to talk about. For the first hour, their work was punctuated by an unusual tension. Kai's playful teasing, usually met with Ren's soft smiles, elicited only small, distracted nods. Kai sensed something simmering beneath the surface, a subtle unease he couldn't yet name. It wasn't until Kai reached for a bottle of yellow paint, tipped slightly to pour some into his palette, that disaster struck. His hand slipped. A rush of thick, bright yellow spilled across the section Ren had spent hours perfecting. the delicate gradient of blues and greens smeared into chaotic streaks. "Oh no. Kai exclaimed, panic flooding him. Rin froze, eyes widening as he stared at the ruined section. "It's ruined," he whispered, voice breaking slightly. His hands trembled as he brushed at the yellow streaks, but only succeeded in smearing it further. Kai's stomach dropped. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. I'll fix it, I promise." Rin pulled back, shaking his head. "No, you don't understand. I wanted it to be perfect," he said, his voice tight, almost vulnerable. Kai hesitated. He had seen Ren's carefulness before, but never like this, never so fragile. The intensity of Ren's emotions hit him in a way he hadn't expected. He knelt beside him, brushing his hands over the mess, gently guiding Ren's trembling fingers. "Hey, look at me," he said softly. "It's just paint. It can be fixed. We can make it better together." Ren's gaze met Kai's, eyes shimmering, and for a moment the world around them, the hot courtyard, the splattered paint, the distant laughter of students, faded. He inhaled sharply, the tension easing just slightly. Maybe you're right," he whispered. They spent the next hour carefully layering new colors over the ruined section. Kai followed Ren's lead, mimicking his strokes, while Ren, slowly regaining confidence, adjusted Kai's rough edges. Their hands brushed repeatedly, and each accidental touch sent a shiver through both of them, though neither acknowledged it aloud. By midday the section was no longer ruined, but transformed. The chaotic yellow streaks had blended with Ren's meticulous blues and greens, creating a texture more dynamic than either had imagined. They stepped back to admire their work, both breathing heavily from the effort and the tension of the morning. Ren smiled faintly, a mixture of relief and pride. "It actually looks better," he admitted, eyes flicking to Kai. "Thanks for helping." Kai grinned, trying to mask the pounding of his heart. "I told you. Sometimes mistakes make things better." After lunch, they took a break under the shade of the old oak tree at the edge of the courtyard. Kai pulled out 2 bottles of water, handing one to Ren. He noticed how Ren's hand lingered slightly longer than necessary on the bottle, the soft pressure of his fingers against Kai's sending a jolt through him. "You know," Kai began a little nervously, I'm glad we're doing this. Not just the mural but you. I like working with you, Ren." Ren's cheeks colored faintly. I like working with you too," he admitted, his voice barely audible over the rustle of leaves. "Even when things go wrong." Kai's heart swelled at the vulnerability in Ren's words. He wanted to say more, to reach out and brush a stray strand of hair from Ren's forehead, but he hesitated. Something in the quiet air told him this moment was delicate, fragile, like the thin film of paint drying on their mural. One wrong move and it could be smudged, ruined. Instead, he simply nodded and offered a small smile. "Even when things go wrong." The afternoon passed in a blur of paint, laughter, and unspoken words. By the time the sun began its slow descent, casting long shadows across the courtyard, the mural had transformed. Each brushstroke, each color blending into the next, carried a piece of them, joy, frustration, quiet understanding, and the spark of something neither could fully name. Kai noticed a small blank space in the corner of the mural, untouched and almost overlooked. Without thinking, he reached over, pressing his hand gently against the wall, leaving a smudge of green mixed with yellow. Ren's eyes widened slightly as he realized what Kai had done. "You," Ren began, voice soft, uncertain. Kai shrugged, trying to appear casual, though his heart was racing. "I wanted to leave something for us. Like before." Ren hesitated, then slowly placed his own hand beside Kai's, pressing it lightly against the wall. Their fingers brushed, lingering this time, neither pulling away. The warmth of their touch, the soft pressure, made something stir inside both of them. A mixture of fear, longing, and the first tentative flutter of love. "Maybe mistakes aren't so bad," Ren murmured, almost to himself. Kai smiled, leaning a little closer. "Maybe not," he replied softly. "Especially when they happen together." As the courtyard emptied, leaving only the two of them in the mural, Kai realized something important. This summer was no longer just about painting a wall. It was about building something bigger, something fragile and beautiful, with someone who had already begun to leave a permanent mark on his heart. And though neither of them said it out loud, both felt it, the quiet, undeniable truth that what had started as simple collaboration was growing into something far more. Something neither of them would want to erase. The sun hung low over the courtyard, casting golden light across the wall that Kai and Ren had transformed over the past weeks. Colors swirled in a riot of blues, greens, and yellows, accented by delicate details only visible up close. Tiny flowers, faint clouds, streaks of sunlight painted in careful layers. In one corner, almost hidden but impossible to miss if you looked carefully, two handprints pressed side by side glowed brightly against the chaos of colors. Kai stood a few steps back, brush in hand, surveying the mural. He felt a strange mix of pride, relief, and something heavier, an unspoken tension that had been building for days. This was the final day before summer break, and the mural was finished. Yet, as much as he was proud of the wall, his mind kept returning to Ren, who was crouched a little farther down, finishing the last few delicate strokes. Ren's focus was intense, lips pressed into a thin line as he added subtle shading to a corner of the mural. Kai noticed how the sunlight caught the strands of hair framing Ren's face, the way his dark eyes, usually so calm and observant, held something deeper today, nervousness perhaps or anticipation. "Ren," Kai said softly, stepping closer. Ren looked up, startled, but there was a flicker of relief in his eyes when he recognized Kai. "Yes?" he asked quietly. Kai hesitated, then pointed toward the two handprints in the corner. "They're ours, aren't they?" Ren's lips curved into a small, shy smile. "I guess they are," he admitted, brushing a stray streak of paint from his fingers. "I wanted something to stay. Even if summer ends." Kai's chest tightened. He had been thinking the same thing, though he had been too nervous to say it aloud. Without thinking, he stepped closer and pressed his own hand beside Ren's, letting their fingers brush gently. The warmth of Ren's skin mixed with the damp paint sent a shiver through him. "Maybe," Kai said, voice low, "this summer isn't just about the mural." Ren looked up at him, eyes wide, lips slightly parted. I think you're right," he whispered. For a moment, neither moved. The courtyard was empty, save for the two of them and the mural that had been their shared canvas, their shared world. The sun dipped lower, casting golden light over their faces, making every color on the wall glow. Kai took a careful step closer. "Ren?" Ren's fingers brushed against his, stopping him. "I don't know if I should." "Don't think," Kai said softly, finishing the sentence for them both. He leaned in and Ren's hand tightened slightly in his. Then, finally, slowly, hesitantly, their foreheads touched. It was a small, tentative gesture, but it held everything. The nervousness, the longing, the quiet thrill of something new and fragile. Ren closed his eyes, letting the moment wash over him. I'm glad it's you," he murmured. Kai smiled, brushing a thumb over the back of Ren's hand. "Me too. It should have been you from the start." The air around them seemed to hum with warmth, the quiet sounds of the courtyard, the rustling leaves, distant chirping of birds, the faint hum of a summer breeze, blending into a perfect soundtrack for their moment. They stayed that way for a long while, heads close, fingers intertwined, until the sun dipped behind the horizon and the courtyard fell into soft, fading light. Finally, Ren pulled back just slightly, eyes still bright. "What happens after summer?" he asked quietly, almost afraid of the answer. Kai thought for a moment, heart pounding. "We keep painting. Not just walls, but us. Whatever we can. Summer doesn't have to end everything." Ren smiled, a mix of relief and something deeper. Hope, trust, affection. "I'd like that," he said softly. They took one last step back to admire the mural in its entirety. Every stroke, every color, every mistake and correction told the story of their summer together. And in the corner, the intertwined handprints glowed softly, a small, permanent reminder of what they had shared. "Ready to leave our mark somewhere else?" Kai asked, grinning. Ren chuckled, brushing a hand against Kai's arm. "Only if you promise not to spill paint this time." "I can't make any promises," Kai replied, winking. "But I can promise, we'll make it beautiful." They laughed, the sound echoing across the empty courtyard, carrying the warmth of golden sunlight and the quiet magic of young love. And as they walked side by side, hands brushing, hearts quietly racing, the mural behind them stood as a testament, not just to colors on a wall, but to two hearts finding each other in the middle of a summer that would never be forgotten. That night, Kai lay in bed thinking about Ren, the mural, and everything that had happened over the past weeks. He realized that the summer hadn't just been about painting. It had been about connection, about taking risks, about letting someone else leave a mark on your life. And he knew, with a quiet certainty, that the mark Ren had left on him would never fade. The summer had begun as a simple project, but it ended as something far more meaningful. A beginning, a promise, and a story they had created together, stroke by stroke, laugh by laugh, and heart by heart.